Hey my gardening friends, you're watching Gardening on Taylor Mountain and my name is Bobby. I wanted to get a quick update in of the cut garden before August is over, and we're just right at the end of August. This is actually take 2 of this video. I filmed an entire video and I've been editing it back and I actually bored myself. It was so much talking. So I said, I just can't put this one on. So I'm going to redo it. I'm going to try to make it more brief so that I won't bore you. I am going to insert one part of that video because the day I was working in the garden preparing to cut flowers for a friend's daughter's wedding, and the pollinators were just swarming everywhere. So I also wanted to talk with you a few thoughts I had about attracting pollinators, keeping pollinators coming to your cut flower garden or for your gardens, in your landscape, wherever you may not have a cut flower garden. But we need to keep our pollinators coming and we need to keep them happy. So I had a few thoughts about that. So we'll give a quick tour on a few things. You will see some holes because I did cut heavily for the friend's daughter's wedding. But let's turn the camera around and we'll go in the garden and we'll take a look. So I don't know if you can see me. Hello, I'm over here. You've heard of swimming with the dolphins, right? Well, this is gardening with the butterflies and the bees. So what I want to do is just start preparing. I've been trying to deadhead as much as I can so that I can keep my zinnias going. These are the Queen Lime series and a few of the Cinderella series. I said in another video that I am not planning on growing the Cinderella series again, but I will always grow the Queen series, the Queenie series I call them, the Queen Lime, the Queen Red, the Queen, I think it's Yellow I grew. I absolutely love them. So I hope you're able to see some of the pollinators here that I'm working with today. And I'm just going in and sort of deadheading, sort of removing anything that's completely done out of these zinnias. I also have a lot of Benary's Giants we'll be looking at in a minute. And the August garden gets wild and woolly and completely wonderful. You know, it's just all those things wrapped up into one. Oh, there's a honeybee. Oh my goodness. And she's got, or he's got, whichever, all kinds of pollen on its little legs. Are so cute. I've tried to keep ahead of just cutting out spent blooms and cutting blooms. You know, the more you cut on most all of your cut flowers, the more they come again. The more they grow, the more they produce new buds and things. So especially like your dahlias, if you stop cutting your dahlias, they'll stop producing. They'll say, okay, we're finished. We'll start here with the Scumfrina, and you can see a big hole in there where I cut a lot of the raspberry cream. And I hear a hummingbird. I don't know if I can catch. It's usually the females here. Anyway, no, she's gone. But I cut a bunch of the raspberry cream for the wedding. And I'm getting ready to harvest a lot more of this Scumfrina to dry. I love Scumfrina. Such an easy, warm season annual to grow. It's an annual here in my area. And then here is a succession of zinnia that I pretty sure I direct sowed these. It's just in a resin barrel. And then we come to this Celosia. And I have 5 different varieties of Celosia growing in this raised bed. I think I'm going to switch around to the other side. Hold on just one second. Okay, this is a better view of the Celosia. And as I was saying, I have 5 different varieties of Celosia. I will put all of those varieties in the description below. But I have a lot of Celosia left, and I cut a ton for the wedding. And I enjoy Celosia so much for fresh bouquets, but I dry, honestly. I really grow it mostly for drying. These are Benary's Giants zinnias growing in this fire ring. I cut quite a bit of that as well for the wedding. And this is Rose Bonbon Cosmo here. Behind that is some Diablo Cosmo that self-seeded itself from last year. The Diablo and the orange and yellow Cosmos I found don't do real well. The flowers don't hold up real well in the vase. However, the foliage is great for foliage. And then a couple of successions of sunflowers. These were stunted by the rain that we've had. Let's see if I can move away from my shadow. Anyway, these were stunted by the amount of rain we've had. Sunflowers only like 1 inch of rain per week, or 1 inch of moisture, water, per week. So we've had so much rain that it actually stunted them. But that's okay. I've, had some that have grown to full height and full flower, and some that stay the smaller flower. This is blue wheat here that I've harvested a bunch for drying. These are giant mixed marigolds, and they're mixed colors. I just direct seeded those right in that little old wash tub here, that enamel wash tub that was here on the farm, used by someone, and so I just use that as a planter. I'm excited to have those for more fall type colors. Here's one of my beds of dahlias. This is just a small raised bed. I think it's 48 by 48 or 42 by 42. And I've grown dahlias in this bed for the last several years. My dahlias are a little bit slow coming on because I didn't plant them until the end of May. In my zone 6B here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, my last frost date is around April 23rd, so I could have planted out my dahlia tubers around the 1st of May. I would have been safe for all frost, usually frost and freeze, to be done. But I waited until the end of May for some reason. I don't even remember the reason. And so my dahlias are really slow coming on, but they're all full of buds. I'm excited for those. I had 2 sunflower seeds left out of my packet that I had from him, and I just direct sowed them, so they're going to be blooming here any minute. Their blooms are going to crack open. I've got some coxcomb here that I've been using for drying. A couple different varieties. And let me walk around here. Whoop, there's a nice little web, but I don't see any spiders working on it, so I'm going to let it go. Okay. Let me walk around here. I did plant a little row on either side of this bed of the Benary's Giants wine color. And I've been harvesting on those. I need to deadhead. You can see that bloom is done. But this is the tower of the cup and saucer vine / hyacinth bean vine. I will never, ever, ever plant those two together again. Oh gosh, what a mess. But I do see a couple of cup and saucer vine blooms there. Look at there. Okay, so I'm not sure why I had that not bright idea to do those 2 vines together. I know they both grow very large. That was really dumb. That was a dumb idea. Next time I grow a cup and saucer vine, I'm going to try to put in an arch trellis somewhere, because your cup and saucer vine wants to get like as much as 12 feet or even taller. 12 feet, grow to 12 feet or even taller, I've heard of. So I wanted to be able to do its thing and to be happy, as well as the hyacinth bean. I want it to be happy if I grow that again. That is blooming. You can see that. And then you can harvest the beans once the pods have dried, and you can save your beans and grow them again. You don't eat those beans, but you can save them and grow them again the following year. Let's just get one more view of this cup and saucer vine. Looks like maybe something has eaten on it a little bit. I can't tell real well in the camera, but there's another bud coming on. The few Lizzianthus plants that I have left are actually putting on a few more blooms. Look at there. I love Lizzianthus so much. Next year, Lord willing, I'm going to dedicate a much better space for my Lizzianthus. Oh, love it so much. This is the next to the last succession of pro-cut sunflowers that I started from seed indoors. They are going to be, they are pro-cut red and pro-cut deep orange excel, I believe is the name. And you can see they're already forming their sunflowers, but how short they are. You see how short they are? Most likely just because of being stunted by the rain. But it's fine with me. The pro-cuts, sometimes they don't grow real tall, and that suits me just dandy. Then I had some Scumfrina left over, some Scumfrina seeds, transplants actually, from my seedlings. And I just stuck them in this little galvanized container. I need to harvest those for drying. And I'm slowly cleaning out my cool flowers. There's some yarrow I harvested for the wedding. And my straw flowers, unfortunately, it was not the greatest year for my straw flowers. And I meant to harvest that lemon basil right there. That self-seeded itself from last year, and I meant to harvest that for the wedding, and it looks like I forgot. So I'll use that for something else. That makes great foliage for your flower arrangements. But back to the straw flowers, I'm sure it was my fault. And I did get quite a bit to dry and use in arrangements and things, but not the greatest year for straw flowers. But I'm preparing my beds now. You can see I'm emptying out my beds there and working on that to sow my fall sown cool flowers. And since I'm in zone 6B, there are several things I can fall sow that will overwinter. This is my very last succession of pro-cut sunflowers for this season. Kind of makes me a little sad. But anyway, I just direct seeded these. I had some seeds left over. I don't even know what all I have in here. It's as a mixture. And the rain has sort of damaged some of their little foliage a little bit. They're going to be just fine. My first frost date is around October 23rd. So I will definitely have some sunflowers before that time. They have plenty of time left. I will show you real quick my pumpkin patch. My grandson sowed these seeds for me. My granddaughter and I were in the garden doing something else, and he sowed 6 hills for me. And they just have taken off. These are all mini pumpkins. There's the Weeby Little, the Hooligan, and the Mini Harvest Blend. And let's walk around here. I can hear the bees just working in the flowers. Can you hear them? Yep. Anyway, these will be ready in just a little under a month. They'll be ready to harvest. There's one there, and that will be turning orange. And then I have the blend. It has some white and some striped. See if we can sneak under there. Yeah, I see those couple under there. And I have these, I put in these 2 A-frame trellises here. I'm so glad at least I did that, because if I hadn't have done that, then, oh gosh, they would just be laying all over the ground everywhere. So I love pumpkins so much. I enjoy them. And you can use these are edible, the ones I'm growing here, but I use them for decoration and then giving them away. See, I have a little something going on. It might be like the squash bug, maybe working on that little part of the plant. But these will start to die back, and then the pumpkins will be ready to harvest. So I'm excited about that. I also wanted to show you the succession of red and orange zinnias that I planted in this fire ring over near my greenhouse. You can check to see when your first frost date is in your area, and then count back however many days it says on the seed packet. Zinnias, sunflowers, lots of things. You can continue to either direct sow or start indoors, and you can still have a harvest up until your frost time. So these were planted out a little bit later. I started these from seed indoors, and then I transplanted them out. And I'll show you, I'll walk over here past some of this other menagerie, but what I want to show you is another succession of the Hot Biscuits amaranth. right around here. So I just sowed seeds of the hot biscuits, and I counted back the days until my first frost date, and I knew I would have enough time. And I also sowed another succession of the limelight millet there. So I wanted a few more of those things for drying. So just keep sowing your seeds, or however you like to start your seeds, and check your first frost date and you'll be good to go. I hope you got a good view in that one little clip of all the pollinators that were working with me that day in the garden. Here are a few things that I do to try to keep the pollinators happy in my garden. One would be I plant annuals and things that I know that they would feed on and that they would get nectar from. So you saw the zinnias, they love zinnias, and you can plant annuals. Start your annuals from seed. Just get some inexpensive seed packets and start some annuals, or direct seed some annuals, whatever's the most easiest for you. And the pollinators will be very happy with that. They will feed on those. Another thing that I do is to make sure that I leave things in the garden that the pollinators can feed on, things that I know I'm not going to be cutting on, and just leave them there in my garden spaces so that the pollinators can have plenty to feed on. Another thing we should do in our gardens is have a water source for the pollinators, and you're seeing mine now. This is just a poultry waterer, and do be sure and add some little rocks or pebbles or stones or something if you have something like this that's a little bit deeper, because the bees can drown in the water as they're drinking, so they need something to stand on. With this waterer, I only clean it out and refresh it about every 4 days. So it's really not that big of a deal. It's really important to have a water source near where your pollinators are working so that they will have water to keep themselves hydrated. And this can just be a little pan. It can be elevated, it can be on the ground. It doesn't matter, just as long as you have that water source. Another thing we can do to ensure we keep the pollinators in our garden spaces is to grow native plants in your straight species. And when I say straight species, I mean the straight species are those that have not been cultivated from other plants. They are straight native plants to your area. If you go on the National Wildlife Federation website and you can put in, I believe it's you put in your zip code, or you put in the area where you live, and then you just say what are the native plants to in my area. The National Wildlife Federation has that information on their website, so that's very helpful. And these days the nurseries are selling native plants, so they're really getting on board with wanting to keep our pollinators happy. We have a lot of native plants here on the farm, a lot of things that I can't even name, but we have Joe Pye weed and Queen Anne's lace and native milkweed and prairie fire, all kinds of things that the pollinators feed on. We have pawpaw trees. Pawpaw tree is the host tree for the zebra swallowtail, and of course you can also eat the fruit from the pawpaw trees. So it's important to have those native straight species growing in our gardens. Another thing that I think is extremely important is not to spray any pesticides in your garden areas where you know your pollinators are feeding. I don't spray anything in my cut flower garden. I don't spray anything in my other garden areas, even organic. I don't use organic sprays any longer. I used to, but I've learned a lot of things even about the organic spray. So even though I was spraying at the correct time in the evening and everything like that, I no longer spray anything. I keep a bucket of soapy water on hand if I need to pick off any bugs. I squish a lot of bugs, and I just really watch and do as best as I can with my own hands, with my own eyes, keeping the bad bugs at bay. And you're just going to have them. They're just going to be there. You're not going to have a perfect garden. We're just not, because we want to keep those good beneficial bugs coming. We want that ecosystem working for our gardens, and that way you don't have to be spraying and you don't have to be doing all of the work. Let the good bugs take care of the bad bugs, and then let the pollinators keep your gardens pollinated, and we'll just keep everything going that way in the natural order of things. You know, when you see little hummingbirds flying around your plants, they're not just super cute to watch and super fun. They're actually when they're getting their nectar, they're actually pollinating your plants because they get the pollen on their little heads and then they move to the next flower and they pollinate that. So it's just all working together. The bats, even though I'm not a fan of bats, we need those bats because they're pollinators. The bees, we need to keep everything going in our gardens. And by doing these few things, you can ensure that the pollinators continue to come in your garden areas. Another thing you can do is have a bee or butterfly habitat. And I don't have any of those little bee houses or butterfly houses in my gardens. Most all of my cut flowers, especially like the celosia, for instance, the bees not only feed on the celosia, but they also sleep on it. So it's kind of hard to cut it and it's kind of hard to harvest it because they're either sleeping on it or they're feeding on it. But anyway, that's a good example of a bee habitat, is your actual flowers that they're living in and they're feeding on. But having some of those little bee habitats and some of those little butterfly houses aren't a bad thing. Well, it's time for me to wrap this video up, and I really appreciate you joining me today. I really appreciate you being here and spending some time with me. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do that. I would really appreciate it. And also leave me a comment. I'll get back to you and we can chat a bit. And give me a thumbs up if you like this video. And until next time, friends, happy gardening. Bye-bye.